Welcome to another video. We talked in our other videos that we're going to be talking about three parts of behavior, which we call the ABCs of behavior. And those three parts all work together to influence the behaviors that we see in kids. So in our last video, Jessica talked about the A, which stands for antecedents and is what we can do before the behavior to help make it happen or to help stop it from happening. So in this video, I'll talk about the B, which stands for the behavior itself. There's lots of different things that we could do to get exactly the behaviors we hope to see. And then the third part of the ABCs of behavior is the consequences, which is what happens after the behavior occurs. So think about some of the behaviors that you would like to decrease or increase. And these could be things like finishing homework, helping with the dishes, going to bed on time, or anything else that you might think of that's going on in your house right now. So if you find yourself reminding your child over and over again to do certain things and really aren't seeing any change, that might be a good time to try some of the strategies that we cover in our videos. And the strategy that I'm talking about today specifically is called shaping. And it's one of two that are really, really helpful in influencing your child's behavior. Another one is called simulation, and Jessica will talk about that in our next video. So shaping. Shaping consists of rewarding small steps that really just approximate or even just begin to resemble the final behavior that you're hoping to get. For example, maybe the behavior you're hoping to get is getting ready for bed by themselves. But with shaping, with the strategy I'm talking about, we break it down. And what getting ready for bed means, we break that down into several smaller steps. And then we slowly build up to the true expectations, which is getting ready for bed independently. So let's say getting ready for bed involves three activities. First, they have to get into their pajamas, then they have to brush their teeth, and then they have to pick a story to read. With shaping, you would work on one of those steps first, get it down consistently, and then add in a new component. So for example, work on getting pajamas on first. And when your child can do that piece consistently, maybe by doing it 4 out of 4 nights of the week, then add on brushing teeth. So really shaping is a systematic way to start out small and grow from there. Shaping really actually occurs a lot in our everyday lives, and it helps us learn to become better at things. For example, if you've ever learned a new skill, like cooking, you probably didn't start out with 5-course gourmet meals. You probably started with really simple dishes and built up your skills from there. Another example that we see occur naturally in kids is when babies begin to talk. Usually, they don't start out with comprehensible words. They do a lot of mumbling and making random sounds instead. But parents are usually really excited about these small steps towards talking. That excitement that parents show really encourages babies to continue practicing and repeat the behavior. So when they start saying real words, parents usually encourage them by saying, "Wow, you just said mommy or daddy." But the baby maybe didn't actually say mommy or daddy, but rather something that kind of sounded like it. But still, they were being praised by the parents because they were getting really close or getting closer and closer. So with this continued encouragement, the baby would eventually get closer and closer to saying words correctly and start stringing words together and eventually start talking. So the same thing also happens when toddlers start to walk, for example. At first, your toddler might stand up, take one single step, and fall down immediately. But still, usually parents say, "Oh my gosh, you just walked." But your toddler didn't actually walk. He tried and he took one step, but because he's just starting out, he fell. But as parents, you smile, you show really great praise and excitement, and the toddlers continue attempting at walking, and eventually they do develop actual walking. So walking and talking are great examples of shaping, but they are a little bit different because both of these behaviors do come with their own rewards, like being able to move more independently or communicate with others. So those will typically develop on their own, even without parental praise. So for changing other behaviors that really don't have these intrinsic rewards, like washing dishes or doing homework, it might be more difficult to change them or increase them. So with going back to our getting ready for bed example, parents might just be reminding kids over and over again or complain that they aren't following instructions. And this just typically leads to a lot of frustration for everyone. And at the same time, it also doesn't do much to change the behavior. And sometimes parents might even get frustrated by the lack of behavior and yell. And maybe that does get the behavior, but usually it is a shock factor and usually only gets the behavior that one time, not for the long run. Shaping, though, can help get the behavior for the long run. So let me cover some tips for how to use shaping effectively. First, you want to gently instruct rather than tell your child to put on their pajamas. At the beginning of shaping, again, you start really small and just use simple instruction like, go put on your pajamas now, please. If you do get the behavior, praise it effusively. Then if you don't get the behavior on the other side, that's okay too. If you don't get it, join your child, offer to do it together in a way that is helpful and not angry. Just a matter of fact, all right, let's do it together. So then in the next few days, start phasing yourself out of the behavior if you are helping and have your child do it by themselves. Then repeat this for a couple of days until it's really consistent. Like we said, maybe 4 out of 5 days of the week. And then you're ready to increase the demands. For example, now you're putting on pajamas and brushing your teeth. When you're increasing demands, phrasing it as a challenge can really help. So saying something like, I bet you can't put your pajamas on and brush your teeth. So using a playful tone or a little bit of a doubtful tone in a playful way can help make the task sound more fun or like a challenge. Also, when using shaping, focus on just one behavior at a time, not multiple. So from a developmental perspective, we aren't too concerned if a child can get themselves ready for bed by themselves or not. What we, and you probably as well, really care about is developing good listening skills instead of defying instructions from parents or other adults. And any behavior really, like getting ready for bed, cleaning the dishes, or putting on shoes when they're asked, can help develop those listening skills. So those listening skills are likely to carry over into other behaviors. They're not likely to stay just focused on getting ready for bed. So when using shaping, it's okay and easier and likely will lead to more success to just focus on one behavior at a time and then let the ripple effect take over from there. So that being said, another good way to use shaping is to not even pick a specific behavior, but to practice being a good listener more directly. You can use shaping in this way by praising your child for being a good listener for easy requests first, like something that's fun. For example, coming to the kitchen for a snack or putting on their shoes to go somewhere that's really fun, like the playground. So really anything that you could think of that your child has no trouble doing at all right now and that doesn't usually lead to any defiance or a power struggle. And then you would praise those easy requests for about a week and then extend the praise to more difficult requests. When you use praise when you use shaping, what's really important to remember is to add that praise. And when you're adding the praise, always use the special praise that I talked about in our first video. In the example of putting on shoes to go to the playground, you would use that special praise by saying, great, you put on your shoes when I asked, so you're being specific, you're being enthusiastic, then you would add a nonverbal, like a high five or a hug, and really reinforcing that. So again, using the praise will increase the likelihood of your child being a good listener again in the future. And there's lots of other examples that you could use shaping for, and lots of ways to use shaping. So one example is, getting more of a little bit of behavior, like working on homework. You would start with just 10 minutes at a time, or whatever is really easy for your child, and slowly build up from there. Or cleaning toys, for example. Ask for just a few at first, and then slowly increase the demands. And then on the flip side, shaping can also be good for getting less of a lot of behavior. So with bedtime, for example, you can decrease the amount of time it takes to get ready. At first, you give a lot of time for the behavior to occur, but then you increase the demands by decreasing the time that they have available to follow through with that behavior. So, like I said, there is a lot of good ways to use shaping, but really regardless of how you use it, there's 5 key ingredients. So first, you would always specify the behavior you would like. That you do that to yourself, just so you're aware what the final behavior is that you're aiming for. So like I said, that's the final behavior, meaning that's the goal behavior we're striving for. And then second, you would break that behavior apart and identify small steps or portion of that behavior. It could be smaller pieces of the behavior, like I said with bedtime, breaking it down into steps. It could be smaller or longer increments of time, like asking for just 10 minutes of homework rather than an hour. Or it could be an increased level of difficulty, like I talked about with the difficult requests, starting with really easy requests at first and building up from there. And then third, choose what consequence you use when you're using shaping. Praise is a great one, and we definitely recommend it, but some parents prefer a point chart, and we'll talk about how to use point charts more effectively in later videos. And then fourth, praise, or in whatever way you choose to reward the small step or portion of the behavior you identified whenever you see it, and immediately when you see it. And then finally, when you see the small steps or portions of the behavior occur consistently, then you can start increasing the demand very slightly. And then you repeat the process until you get to your goal behavior. So I'll go through one more example specifically using these 5 steps. First, the behavior I want to achieve in my example is cleaning up toys from the living room by putting them back in the child's room. So I write that down for myself or note it in some way. And then second, I break this down by selecting a very small part of that. With, for example, a very resistant child, I might start by moving just one toy from the living room floor to a living room shelf. So it's not even leaving the room, and it's just one of many toys. And then third, I think of my consequence, and I decide on using special praise, but you might, choose to use points or rewards instead. And then fourth, I praise the behavior whenever I see it and give it immediately after the behavior occurs. Now, if I never see it, I might make the steps even smaller and go from putting one toy to a shelf to putting the toy in a corner of the room where it's less in the way of other people. And finally, I increase the demands by praising 3 toys being placed on the living room floor shelf instead of just one. Or instead of bringing the toy to the shelf, I praise it for now being brought all the way to the child's room. And again, I increase those demands after I see the toy being placed on the shelf consistently. All right, so before I wrap up with shaping, I want to address some very common questions that people have about this strategy. You might be wondering why you need to do shaping at all. Maybe you're thinking that your child already knows how to do the behavior, but as we know, knowing often has really little to do with doing, and it's completely normal to get frustrated by that, but it's something that we all struggle with. For example, we might know that exercise is really good for us, but we don't do it as often as we should, or we might glance at our phone while we're driving, even though we know the dangers. So it's important to try not to get too frustrated with kids when they don't do everything they know they should. So another question you might have is, what if your child doesn't even do the very first step that you select in shaping? And the simplest answer is to make the steps even smaller. You might have to get really creative here. For example, even just moving their spoon to their lips and not eating or opening their mouth at all could eventually help your child eat more vegetables. Or just having a book next to them for a little bit might have them reading more eventually. And so, like we said too, another answer to this question is that providing a little help in the beginning is fine. If it helps getting the first step started, it's okay to provide a little bit of help. As you're offering that help, just remember to offer it in a really matter-of-fact way without getting frustrated or scolding in any way. And then if neither of those answers help to getting that first step started, the next video that Jessica will do on simulation might provide some more solutions or strategies to try. And then one really important thing to consider, though, if you're not getting that first step, is that shaping fails most often because the initial bar is set too high. So, for example, if your goal is to have your child clear the table, when that is something she never does, asking for half of the table to be cleared as a start is too high. So start much, much smaller. Start with a single dish and build up from there. If you start with half, it's likely you're not going to get anything at all. So gradual increments will really be worth your while in terms of getting you to that ultimate goal. And then another worry you might have with shaping is that it might feel like a slippery slope, especially if you're having to offer help to get your child started. You might be thinking that if you have to help now with this first very simple step, you'll always have to help. And really the opposite should be true. You just help a little bit at first to get it started, and then your praise and encouragement will help them move on to those next steps. And as you're helping at first, you just slowly phase yourself out and build your child's skill in completing that step themselves. So that was all we had on shaping. Remember, we're showing these strategies in separate videos, but you can always use them in combination for even more effectiveness. For example, today with shaping, we also recommended incorporating praise in that strategy. So try this out at home and feel free to let us know what behaviors you're working on, how you're breaking them down into really small steps, and how it's going, and let us know in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in.